Hello, and a very warm welcome to the latest episode. Now, if you're wondering where the snazzy music and the short introduction has gone, I'm actually recording this on my phone and using my iPad to upload it. So it does sound a little bit different from my usual episodes, and I don't like a cold start, so this feels very, very strange. And if this is your first ever episode that you've listened to, then a very warm welcome to you. And you should know that there is normally a proper introduction which says everything that the podcast is about and some really nifty music, but we don't have it today. Hopefully normal service will be resumed for Friday's episode. So the laptop has gone off to the repair shop in town. I, as you know, managed to wipe it a month ago, and it was never back to normal. And I'd made a number of mistakes. I mean, obviously wiping it was the main one, but when I'd managed to recover my data, it wasn't all in the right place and it wasn't doing what it's supposed to. And I just could not fix it myself, try as I did. So it's actually gone off to a repair shop. And it feels very odd, really, really odd. I feel like I'm actually missing a limb. So I haven't actually done any work over the weekend, and it's been really strange actually having a break from it. So I'm hoping this is actually going to work perfectly well on the phone. We will find out later if I actually manage to get it uploaded. So it is Tuesday, the 20th of January, 2026, and I'm recording this in the afternoon. Now, the only thing I have managed to do since we last spoke is do an arrangement. So I was so inspired by Gardening Alice's post last week, which I told you about, that I thought I want to make something myself. So I foraged a whole load of foliage. I had some really nice fern stems, some choisia or choisia, however you say, Aztec pearl, some what do you call them? It's the hellebore that we have in this country. It's something. It's our native one anyway. It's not a fancy one. It's an evergreen one. And lots of hellebore foliage actually, and then a few stems of actual hellebore flowers, which are really pretty. They really just gorgeous. So I did that yesterday, and it is too big to fit through the front door because I just can't help myself with the sizing. So it's actually up on the plot, and I can look at it when I go into the feed room. So that was nice. And I felt really good doing that, actually. I'd got out of practice of doing arrangements and I'd forgotten just how much I enjoy doing it. And also, I'm really not as good as I think I am. So I had this vision in my head of what I wanted it to look like. And it doesn't look like that at all. It's just this massive thing with mostly just foliage, and none of it's quite in the right place. But anyway, we keep practicing. So since we last spoke, I have actually purchased some more annuals, and I know what you're thinking. I made a big song and dance about not growing too many this year, being very focused and refined and just growing a small number, less than a dozen, and just doing them properly, because the rest of the field is planted up with roses, bearded iris, hydrangeas, lots of perennials, all sorts of other bits and pieces. And I really didn't want to spend all of spring being neurotic over the seedlings. So that was the plan. And then I spent last week doing my seedling plan. So I worked out all the starting dates for everything and when I thought they might flower and all these other helpful notes and everything. And then obviously over the weekend, I was bitten by the bug that says, you've only got one opportunity to grow things this year. You can't possibly leave it at 12, like go and buy more. And I was unable to silence that voice in my head. So the deal that I've made with myself is that, yes, it's okay to grow some more different varieties, perhaps in small numbers, and just say that I am trialing them. So for the purposes of the tape, I am trialing probably about 8 other varieties of annuals, which I was going to share with you today. And knowing that the laptop was going to go into the hospital, I emailed myself my crop sheet so that I could carry on looking at it and talk to you. And I've just opened my emails and it has not downloaded from the server, and it won't download from the server. So I can't tell you what I've got. So I'll have to do that in another episode. Honestly, the best laid plans and all of that. I'm also thinking about how I can store my used duck water over the winter and the spring, in fact, all year round, so that I can actually use it in the summer when I need it to. So the ducks, I think I told you this last week, actually, the ducks, they're only little. They've got washing up bowls and a children's paddling pool, and they get emptied out twice a day, fresh water put in, and the water flows down the slope. The ducks are like up the slope above the plot, and the water flows down the slope and it waters everything sort of in the vicinity. But in the winter, obviously, there's nothing really on the plot, not in that area where it would flow down to. And every time I tip the water away, I think this is absolutely terrible. Like, I cannot keep doing this. So I want to come up with a plan, and I think it's going to involve a bath, because what I want to be able to do is be able to just tip the bucket out really quickly, or the bowl, into a huge receptacle, and then have it drain out of the bottom of the bowl down a pipe into another storage container somewhere else. Now, I've already got a bath on the plot that I haven't set it up yet, but I got it from a skip, and it's going to be used to hydrate the hydrangeas this year, because last year the hydrangeas went into my shower tray to hydrate. So if you dunk them in water, like you put them underneath the water, like you just cover them in water, and they rehydrate through their petals, and they last a lot longer, and they look absolutely fantastic. And it was a brilliant setup. And the only fly in the ointment was that it meant my shower tray was out of action. So whenever I was storing hydrangeas for anything, I couldn't have a shower, which is obviously not ideal and might be too much information. So the whole purpose, when I saw this bath, I was like, perfect, I need that for the hydrangeas. So I can't use that, but I'm thinking that something a little bit like a bath would be great. And I can just chuck all these buckets in and then set up some not hose pipe, but like proper piping that comes out the bottom that goes off somewhere else. So I'm going to think about how I can actually do that. Now, what else did I want to tell you? Oh, yes, that's that. So I can't talk about the seeds just yet. I'll do that in another episode. So I had a couple of questions about my seed sowing plan. So I've been talking about it all of last week. And one of the questions I had from a listener is, why set a financial goal? And this is an excellent question, and it's not something I have ever done before or ever really thought about. And it is something that I picked up on my course from Jenny Marks, the course I've just done. And at the time when I was doing it, the course, I remember thinking, I can't really set a financial goal. Like, how do you pluck a number out of thin air? How does it have any kind of meaning? How do you even start? Like, where would you even choose a number from? And what is the point of it? And what we learned on the course is really, it's just important to have a goal, to have something to work towards. And now I'm on the other side of the course and I completely understand the value of it. And without having this number, which is only a goal, it's not like set in stone or anything. It's just something for me to help to know what I'm aiming for. Because if you don't know where you're aiming, you're never going to get the ball through the hoop, right? And it would, of course, be wonderful if I turned around at the end of a season and said, oh, I've made like £100,000. How amazing. But you're not going to get there. I don't think I'm going to get there if I don't have a goal and a figure in mind. So I have created a figure very loosely based on what I made last year. And this is what I want to aim for this year. And it's very much like a top line figure. It's revenue. It's how much revenue I would like to bring in this year. And the reason it's been so helpful having done it is that it can help me see that when I look at all the numbers of the seeds I'm planning to grow, how many I hope will germinate, how many will survive when they've been planted out, how many stems that I think I'm going to get from each plant, and the different sales channels that I'm going to have can help me to see, once you've run it all through a spreadsheet, which I must say I feel really naked without my spreadsheets at the moment. I miss them. Once you run all those numbers through, you'll have a figure at the bottom, and that figure may be close to my financial goal. It may be absolutely miles away. And if it's miles away, it's going to help me to work out what different things I need to be doing. So do I need to reassess my cost of production? Do I need to reevaluate my pricing? Do I need to find some different sales channels? So it's really just going to be this really helpful number. And I'm not fixated on it, but it is there to help drive all of the other decisions that need making. Now, another question I had, this is a really great question. How does the plan that I'm doing, this seed sowing plan, help with doing everything. And there's actually quite a few ways of doing it. So if I tell you that in 2025, I just got my seed sowing box out at the beginning of March, and I just rifled through it. I'd bought lots of new seed, and I also had just packets of old stuff just accumulating that we just all have. These things that sort of every year you think, oh, I'll do that next year, and you don't, but you can't bear to throw the seed away. So you just have packets and packets of stuff. And I got all the seed out, and there was absolutely no order to it whatsoever. So I literally just opened a packet, started sowing, sowed it, opened the next packet, carried on. And then 2 weeks later, I did exactly the same thing. And I didn't take any notice of whether it was a cool season seed, as in hardy in the UK, or a tender one. I started all of them off in a completely random order, and I just kept doing that for weeks and weeks. And I look back on that now with some kind of a mixture of shame and horror, quite honestly, because what I've learned this year, of course, is that the tenders don't need to be started until much later, because we know that they can't go outside until the last risk of frost is over. And then, even then, to be cautious about it, because some of them, like the zinnias, they just don't want to have cold feet. So if you put them out too early, they're just going to sulk and they might die, and it might just restrict their growth, and they'll just be so unhappy. They'll just sit there struggling. And because they're warm season tender annuals, there's no reason for them ever to be in that situation. So it doesn't make any sense to start sowing them at the 1st of February or the 1st of March, because if they're ready to go out 6 weeks later, but it's not warm enough, then it's pointless. And what I then end up doing is having them clogging up the greenhouse, because they can't really go outside. They need watering, they need feeding. The roots are going to get root bound. They might need potting on, and there's not enough space. So they need to be started at the absolute right time for them, based on when they can go outside and start to have a nice time, not go outside and be miserable. The cool season annuals, like the hardy annuals, like the sweet peas and stuff, they can be started so much sooner. I could actually do them tomorrow if I wanted to, because once they're up and about and they're happy, they can go outside. A little bit of frost protection, but they don't need to be, they can go out kind of when they're ready to go out, like, because they don't mind the cold. So I can start them a lot sooner. So it's things like that that mean having this plan of when you're going to start make things an awful lot clearer and really help with the decision-making process. And it also helps to get it out of my brain now, so that I know a plan for the first date that I'm going to start sowing on. And I will know that I'm doing X number of seeds of this variety on this date. Job done, move on to the next one. There's going to be no thinking required. Like winter for me is clearly the time for thinking, and spring is going to be the time for doing. And spring is not for doing and thinking, unfortunately. It's such an incredibly busy time. It's not just like with the seed sowing, it's just with absolutely everything. There's bed prep going on at the same time for the seeds that are incoming, and there's just masses to do. And you know what it's like. The weather gets nice. You want to go out and do things. People start to want to do things. There are events. There are things to go to. There's birthdays. There's all sorts of stuff. And I know that there isn't going to be enough brain capacity to do absolutely everything. So by doing the planning now, I should be able to start the seed sowing and the whole process with confidence, without having to rethink it at all these different stages of the year. So another question I had was about how much detail, like what are the details that I'm putting into this spreadsheet. Now, I could have talked you through that in some detail if I actually had my laptop in front of me, so can't do that. But what I did do for each of my annual crops, and I need to do this for some of the perennials as well, but that's a story for another day. So the basics I had for the annuals, obviously, is all the seed starting dates and everything else. And we'll come back to that another episode. But the other details that I put in was things like whether the plant was ethylene sensitive or not. And this really means that they are responsive to the chemicals that are given off by other flowers or other things around them. And if you've ever put a banana and an apple in a fruit bowl at the same time, you will understand how it works. So the apple gives off ethylene, and it causes the banana to ripen. And so the same thing happens with the flowers. And again, I haven't got all those details here now, but you can find it on the internet. And I'm not an expert on this because I did not know about this last year. So I'm learning as well. Or maybe you already know this, in which case I'm not going to tell you because you'll just think I'm an idiot for not knowing this. But anyway, there's some flowers that are going to be more sensitive to ethylene and others which just don't give a monkey's. So it's important once they've been cut. It doesn't matter when they're out in the field, but as soon as they're cut and they're in the bucket, we don't want them to have them next to each other. So I'm making notes about which ones are going to be sensitive, and therefore they need to be cut into a bucket by themselves, and ideally not be sat right next to something that's pumping out loads of ethylene, which just means that they will carry on ripening and too quickly. Now, some of the flowers are what's known as dirty water flowers. So these are the ones that you put them in the vase, and things like daffodils, and you know that all this gunky stuff comes out the bottom, makes the water really cloudy, really dirty, and everything seems to just go a bit horrid. So some of these flowers are dirty water ones. I think zinnias are on that list. And so again, it's important to know when I'm cutting them that these dirty water flowers can go in a bucket all by themselves, and all this gunk can fall out at the bottom of the stem, and it's not going to cause an impact for any of the other stems. Now, there's also phototropism and geotropism. Phototropism is the one where the flowers will redirect their heads or their stems to get to the light. So you can cut them all. They've all got straight stems. You put them in a bucket, leave them somewhere overnight, and you come back the next day and they're all at 90 degrees doing something really daft. And they're not necessarily completely ruined. It depends what the florist wants them for, but they no longer have those straight stems. And you've got to watch those guys. And some of them need to be wrapped in maybe just a piece of newspaper or something just to keep the head straight, or put them somewhere where there isn't enough light so they can't do anything daft. The geotropic ones are the guys that will fall over because you didn't get your staking sorted in time, and you literally turn around, and in the time it takes you to turn around, that's it, they've started to go vertically and you can't get that kink out. So that's to do with all the hormones moving along the stems, and they're little monkeys. Snapdragons, I know, are like that. I'm trying to think which other ones instantly spring to mind. I can't think. There's masses of them. I think the cornflowers did it as well. So anything that sort of just leans over and hits the deck, that's it, they'll go vertically, and then you're just stymied. So I wanted to make a note of those because obviously staking is on my super high priority list this year. Absolutely no prisoners are being taken this year. Everybody's going to be staked to win within an inch of their life. So hopefully we're not going to have that issue. But I do want to be aware of the ones that are going to be more susceptible to it. And the final comment that I'm making about each of these annuals is the correct harvest stage. Now, I didn't have a clue about this in 2025, and I'd get an order in and I'd just go out and cut what I thought looked right, and also what I knew the florist needed those flowers for. So if she's got an event in 2 days' time, no point giving her anything with all the buds closed. She wants everything to be open and ready. And there's a relatively short window. If I cut on a Wednesday, she picks up on a Thursday. She's going to do the arrangements on Friday, and then the event will be Saturday. So we kind of need to be within that window where things are open, or they're not necessarily open. They're at the stage that she needs them to be, or he, for that event. So it's just making a note about that. But I thought it would be useful to understand what's like the proper way of doing it. There's all this fantastic terminology like bud crack and all sorts of wild expressions. And so I've just made a comment on the on each tab on this spreadsheet of the correct stage. So for some things, I think with sweet peas, it's when there's like 1 or 2 flowers open, or that might be snaps, 1 or 2, and then you cut them and the rest of the flowers will open. Now, that's not the case for all flowers. Some of them, once you cut them, they won't open any further. That is it. So if you cut too soon, you're in trouble. But others will carry on opening. So that's what I've written down there. And so one of the other final questions that I had was key ways of reducing cost of production, and why this is even a thing anyway. And to be honest, I didn't know really anything about cost of production last year when I first started, and I've learned so much of it over the course of the year, and also from Jenny Marks's course. And you have to understand your cost of production figures in order to understand your pricing and how your whole business functions. Like, you can't make a product for £5 and sell it for 4 because you'll go bust. It's the same thing with the stems. And so I've been collecting as much data as possible. And obviously there is more that I need to collect in order to be able to really understand what these figures look like. One of the ways that cost of production obviously affects the business is if, like I had with my sweet peas, which I told you about on Friday, I thought I'd done really well with those. I sold quite a few of them. I thought I'd got a really good price. And then when I actually worked out how much of my time, my labor costs to produce them, plus the cost of the seeds, I actually made a loss on that crop. So clearly that's not sustainable. So there are a number of ways to reduce the cost of production. One of them is to obviously buy your seeds or your plants at the best price that you can get them. If you can propagate them yourself, then even better. So if you're storing seed, or you can take cuttings, that kind of thing, then amazing. The other thing to do is just to work a lot faster. So I have always enjoyed sowing seeds as just an activity. I've done it a lot for my gardening clients, and it was never something that I rushed. I mean, I used to just enjoy going out there, pottering about, and it's a wonderful task to do. And I had not realized that you actually have to do it at the speed of lightning if you want to make any money. So this year I will be doing things a lot quicker, and I will be doing them in a way that I think actually Jenny Marks suggested this on her podcast, which is do the same tasks repeatedly. So don't keep chopping and changing between doing tasks. So for example, don't take one tray, fill it with compost, then put your seeds in, then write the label. Then, you need to get all of your trays ready, all in one go, get them all cleaned and ready and literally positioned, ready to go. And then get all of your compost trays filled in one go, because by repeating a task over and over again, you reduce the time it takes you to do it. And every time you change from one task to another, your brain has to readjust. And my brain had basically a year off last year, so there was an awful lot of readjusting to stuff, and it took me a long time. And I've learned that this year. I'm very much better already so far in repeating tasks over and over again and getting really quick at them, and then moving on to the next task. Basically saving time rather, and saving money. They are the two ways that you can help with that, and also making sure that you get things, you have an efficient system in your greenhouse or wherever you do your propagating, get things out of the way and onto the next stage of their life, and not holding a lot of things back, which I did this year because of the water issues. And I was very worried about being able to support things properly on the field. So I kept them at home for a lot longer than I should have done, which is all time, and time equals money. And in fact, I was watering maybe sometimes 2-3 times a day. It was very time consuming. And one final question about the project management app that I mentioned on the last episode, called Asana. Now, I'm very far from an expert on this. I got it and downloaded it on the recommendation of the course that I was on as a free tool that you can use. And yes, there's a paid option, but I just have the free basic one. And I am new to project management tools. I normally just have a packet of pens and a lot of Post-its. Very excited. I am a real Post-it note geek. I have the really tiny ones. I have the normal size ones you see in the shop. And then I have extra large ones, and they're about A5 size. Super, super useful. But honestly, if I could get them in like every size, I would get them, because they're amazing. But there comes a point where I am overwhelmed with fluorescent Post-it notes, and I really wanted a place that I could just put things. And I have found Asana to be very helpful for this. You basically can create, if you want to, individual projects within this app, and then assign tasks to it. And you can actually assign a person to do a task. And given that it's just me, myself, and I get assigned everything. I think that's why I got so many emails from them, because I was assigned as the person that was meant to do this task. So I might not assign myself as the person to all of it, because I know it's just going to be me doing it. But there are lots of different tools and techniques in there, and you can also then track all of your individual projects. So I had a project, for example, called Roses. So as you know, I bought lots of roses before Christmas. So I had set up this project called Roses, and it was basically like, choose the roses, place the order, collect the order, check that everything was in there, get them healed in, get them planted. And there were all these different stages. And you might think, well, that sounds really obvious. And I agree with you. It does sound really obvious. And I hold a lot of tasks in my head for gardening work that I would never dream of writing down every single step. But if you think that you're doing that for a whole load of different plants that all have different needs, different things that you have to remember, special things that they like, I mean, it's a lot. And it's too much sometimes to keep it all in your head. Well, it certainly was for me to keep it all in my head. And if you do these tasks one after the other in one day, for example, I probably wouldn't have bothered writing it all down in the app. That would be daft. But because I knew that these things were going to happen over a certain period of time, I also wanted to make sure I didn't forget any of those stages. So I could set a reminder, for example, to chase up the people that I bought the roses from and say, when are they coming in? Whatever. In fact, they came in so quickly, I didn't even have time to chase them. So if you're holding a lot of information in your brain, you can just find, like my laptop, there is not space for absolutely anything else. And you can just literally run out of capacity. And I need all the brain power I can get. So that is why the app I'm finding to be a very useful tool so far. And when my laptop comes back, you can tell I really miss it. I'm going to be updating Asana with all of the spring crops and all of the things that need doing. So I was also going to go on and talk about my marketing plan thoughts. But, I think I've probably chatted for long enough today. I was basically just going to give an overview of what I need to be doing each month and why, but I think we'll come back to that another episode. So that is me for Tuesday. I will be back on Friday, and hopefully I will have my laptop back, and therefore I will be able to do a proper episode with the music at the beginning, the music at the end, and a proper little introduction. So I'm afraid to say there is going to be no music now. It's just literally going to be me saying goodbye and saying please come back on Friday for the next episode, when I'll also be carrying on with the plant profile series. So I feel like it's going to be a really flat ending because there's no music to see me out. So I'll just say all the very best, and see you on Friday.